Objection. I'll now recognize the gentleman from Tennessee for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I listened to all of your opening statements and the chairman and the ranking member and everybody here until I came down. And one thing concerned me, Ms. Tyler, I'd like to ask you. Mr. O'Neill said that the Southern Poverty Law Center was anti-Christian. It upsets me greatly when any group is anti-Jewish, anti-Catholic, anti-Muslim, anti-Christian. Does the Southern Poverty Law Center have any Church of God in Christ folks that maybe support them, and Baptist, Southern Baptist folk, and Methodists, et cetera, et cetera?
So I don't work for the Southern Poverty Law Center. I can't speak exactly, but I do. What I hear you saying is there's a difference between being against a religion and calling out ideologies or hate speech in this case, which is, I think, what is the issue here that we're discussing.
Is the Southern Poverty Law Center against Christian nationalism?
I think that they have named white Christian nationalism as an ideology to watch, as something that does fuel hate-driven violence.
Can you define white Christian nationalism for me? Or
Yeah. So white Christian nationalism is this political ideology that seeks to merge American and Christian identities into one. Put another way, white Christian nationalism suggests that to be a real American, that one has to be a Christian. And it does provide cover for white supremacy and racial subjugation. But as I mentioned earlier, to be against Christian nationalism is not to be anti-Christian.
Right.
I am a Christian, and I represent many, many more people, Christians, who are horrified to see our faith used to justify discrimination, to justify exclusion, and in some cases, violence.
what are some of the other things that, I know you're not necessarily a spokesperson for the Southern Christian Poverty Law Center, but what are some of the other things they stand for and support and oppose?
Yeah, so I know them as a historic civil rights organization that stands against white supremacy, that stands against anti-Semitism, that has brought critical litigation against the Ku Klux Klan, that stands for supporting civil rights and making sure, particularly in the American South, that our promise of equal protection of the law and all of our other civil rights and liberties are protected to the fullest extent of the law.
Well, I think Mr. O'Neill and maybe Mr. Perkins both mentioned the history of the Southern Poverty Law Center being outstanding, and I think Mr. Roy did too, when they used to bring cases, and I still think they do bring cases that are important. And Julian Bond was a very close friend of mine and somebody I know Mr. Raskin knew, and he was a great American. And he was one of the founders of the Southern Poverty Law Center, and Morris Dees as well was a very strong spokesperson for civil rights and a supporter. He was one of the founders. Mr. O'Neill, is there anything you can help me with on Christian groups that they necessarily, not Christian groups, but the fact, your statement that the Southern Poverty Law Center is anti-Christian. How is the Southern Poverty Law Center anti-Christian?
Yeah, so there is this document called the Catechism of the Catholic Church. It lays out the belief statements for Catholics, 1 billion people across the world.
Whose statement? Is that the Southern Poverty Law Center?
No, this is published by the Catholic Church, by the Magisterium of the Catholic Church. The Southern Poverty Law Center, when they decided to put the Ruth Institute, which is a small charity in Louisiana, one of the groups that finds it difficult to respond and have the money to respond to the negative defamation of the Southern Poverty Law Center, in justifying putting them on the hate map, the SPLC quoted, and they didn't just quote it once, they quoted it twice. They quoted the president of the Ruth Institute just saying that the Catholic Church believes, and this is the statement of faith for all Catholics, remember, that homosexual activity is intrinsically disordered. The SPLC put that on there twice, suggesting that just believing what 1 billion Catholics ostensibly say they believe justifies you being on the hate map. If there is anything more anti-Christian than that, I'm not sure what it is.
I don't quite get it. What did the Ruth Institute do to have this SPLC come out?
Yeah, so the Ruth Institute advocates for survivors of the sexual revolution. That's what they call people who suffer from family breakdown. The president of the Ruth Institute, Jennifer Roback Morse, has gone on the radio many times, and she is a devout Catholic, and she has cited the faith positions of the Catholic Church. It is those statements of faith from the Catholic Church that derive directly from the Catechism that the Southern Poverty Law Center decided was hateful enough to cite as evidence to put her on the hate map.
They put her on the hate map.
Yes, they put her on the hate map. They have not put the Catholic Church on the hate map, though by putting her on the hate map in this way, they have suggested that the entire Catholic Church should be on the hate map. This is something I would love
That's
Democrats
pretty strong to take one
condemn.
person, Miss Ruth Morris, and put her on a hate map and say that's the entire Catholic Church. I don't think Pope Leo would be put on that group, I wouldn't think.
Well, Pope Leo stands for the faith statements in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. If the Catechism of the Catholic Church is a hateful document that justifies putting you on the hate map, then he belongs on the hate map logically based on the Southern Poverty Law Center's own presentations.
Ms. Tyler, do you know anything about this lady or the group?
I do not.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. O'Neill, that makes you think? I know a lot of ministers that are Church of God in Christ Kojic ministers who support the SPLC, and there are a lot of Black Baptist churches, maybe not Southern Baptist churches, maybe there are Black Southern Baptist churches too, that support the SPLC.
So the other aspect is, and
They are
this is
Christian.
something I mentioned in the testimony, that the SPLC for a long time, because groups like Tony's have been put on the hate map, the SPLC claims it isn't because they stand for marriages between a man and a woman, but that's essentially what it boils down to if you look at the history of why they chose to put them on there. The SPLC defended themselves from the charge of being anti-Christian for years. In fact, they changed this language once from anti-LGBT to anti-LGBTQ in explaining on their website. So they've stood by this. They said when they were called anti-Christian, they said, no, we're not anti-Christian because we don't put every Christian group that stands for the traditional definition of marriage on the hate map. But they only had one piece of evidence for this, and that was that they didn't put focus on the family on the hate map. Then, earlier this year, the language defending themselves from the anti-Christian charge disappeared from their website, and they put focus on the family on the hate map.
My time is up, and thank you for...
Mr. Cohen, I like the spirited back and forth, and the way you handled that, I was happy to let it go over time, and I appreciate your questions. I'll now recognize the gentleman from California for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.